All right. What's good, everyone? I'm excited. I'm excited today to talk to you guys about my official picks and predictions for UFC 324. This has been a long time coming. We're finally here. We're in fight week. I just saw the first UFC embedded video earlier today, and it was just nostalgic, man. And I can't believe I'm using that word, but that's how long it's been since the last UFC fight card. I can't even remember who was on the last UFC fight card. The UFC really did us dirty with them taking this much time off. However, we've made it. We're here. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I just can't wait. I'm excited for this whole week, for the build-up to the fights, the face-offs, the weigh-ins, and ultimately, fight night where I'm watching these fights with a cold beer with my boys. So that being said, let's get into it. Let's go to the first fight of the night, which is Adam Fugitt versus Ty Miller. When I first saw this fight in the collapse view, Ty Miller, I just saw his face, and I was like, this dude looks so young, and he looks like a bantamweight. I don't know if it's just the way, his face and like the shoulders were structured, but I go and watch his regional tape, and this dude is massive. He is 6'2" with a 77.5-inch reach. He is 6-0. He is primarily a striker, good boxing, and he's fighting a guy in Adam Fugitt, who he's all right. He's not that good. He is losing to the guys he's supposed to be losing, and I think he has a few wins in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. But I do know he's lost to Michael Morales, Mike Malott, and Islam Dulatov. I like Ty Miller here. This is a good fight for him for at least his debut in the UFC. I think he's going to go out there, put on a good performance against Adam Fugitt, and ultimately get a decision win. I would say KO, but, this is UFC. It's not the regional scene anymore. I think Adam Fugitt is going to be or do enough to survive and even make it a little bit competitive against Ty Miller. Ty Miller is 25. He does have the speed edge. He does have power in his hands, which is why I was a little torn on KO or decision. However, with the level of experience Adam Fugitt has, I think he'll be able to weather any storm, but ultimately come up short here against Ty Miller. So give me Ty Miller for my first pick of the night. Then we got Ricky Turcios versus Cameron Smotherman. I like Ricky here. I think Ricky is the better grappler of the two. And I think Ricky is also more of a dog than Cameron Smotherman. And I think that's going to be important in this fight, just because Cameron is the better striker of the two. But I still think Cameron's a little young, a little novice. I haven't seen too much from him to sway me in his direction. I saw his fight against Ricky Simone, City. So he's coming off of 2 losses, and I believe so is Ricky. He lost to Sopaj and Raul Rosas Jr., but I think Ricky is going to implement the grappling just enough to get him a victory here over Cameron Smotherman. I believe Ricky can mix in the takedowns, get some control time on the ground. I don't think Cameron's good off his back, so Ricky can threaten with the submissions. I don't know if he ultimately will get one, but he'll do just enough to possibly get 2 rounds in his favor. And if this fight stays on the feet, though, I will favor Cameron, and he'll probably get his hand raised if they strike for 15 minutes. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think Ricky has more to lose here because they're both on losing streaks. However, Ricky is a little bit older. He is 33, I believe. So this dude needs a win ASAP, because if not, I could see him getting cut. And I think it's going to come down to him maybe doing a little bit more than Cameron in the last round, where he might just initiate some clinching, some grappling, and ultimately take the round and win this fight. So give me Ricky Turcios as my official pick for this fight. All right, and then we have Josh Hokit versus Denzel Freeman. I like Josh Hokit here. I'm not too confident in it, but I will say Josh Hokit is a pretty good wrestler. I saw some of his regional tape as well, and he is a little bit leaner than some of these heavyweights, but dude's an athlete and he knows how to implement his wrestling well, where he controls on the ground and gets out some ground and pound pretty well. So I see that probably being the case here against Denzel Freeman. But then again, I saw Denzel Freeman's fights outside of the UFC, because that fight, his first fight in the UFC, was a snooze fest. I was not going to go back and watch tape on that. So some of his fights on the regional scene were pretty good. He is a big heavyweight. He has pretty good striking. You know, he's pretty fast for his size, and he's also good on the wrestling department as well. He has good takedown defense, but I don't see that being enough here against Josh Hokit. I do think Josh Hokit is probably going to get him down and maybe ground and pound him, or these two guys, knowing that they have like wrestling backgrounds, keep it on the feet. And I think Josh Hokit might land a bigger shot in the exchange against Denzel and ultimately get a KO TKO win. So give me Josh Hokit here to get the dub over Denzel Freeman. All right, and then we got one fight that I'm actually super excited for in Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. Michael Johnson's an OG. He's fought the who's who of the lightweight, or at least the older generation of the who's who. This dude's been around forever, man. And, you know, it's nice to see him on a 3-fight win streak where he is now 39 years old and where he's at in his career. So that is pretty cool. And the fact that he's coming off of a win over Daniel Zellhuber, who is a touted prospect, and the way he beat him was pretty extraordinary for a 39-year-old Michael Johnson. You know, he looked quick, man. His hands look fast at that age. And Daniel Zellhuber had no response to Michael Johnson striking. But here he's fighting against Alexander Hernandez, who I think has pretty good fight IQ. I think if he is going to win this fight, he's probably going to have to initiate the grappling, you know, threaten the takedowns. Michael Johnson might have the faster hands, but Alexander Hernandez has good footwork. And I think he's going to use that to either set up his shots or set up the takedowns, which I think he should do here. He should probably wear down Michael Johnson a bit and then maybe get a KO TKO win in the later rounds. So I'm going to lean to the side of Alexander Hernandez, and he is going to be my official pick here. But I'm rooting for Michael Johnson. It'd be cool seeing him continue this win streak. And who knows, maybe see him back in the top 15 at some point. But give me Alexander Hernandez here. All right, and then we got Alex Perez versus Charles Johnson. I know I've had, in my previous video, had Alex Perez as a live dog, and I do think he is. But ultimately, my official pick will be Charles Johnson. I like Charles Johnson, man. I like his striking. I like that he's coming off a win against Loner Kavanaugh, who threw the kitchen sink at him in the first round. But he was able to weather the storm and ultimately get a win there. He also has a win over Joshua Van, who is the champ right now. And I think this is his breakthrough match, because Alex Perez, he's a tough customer for anyone at flyweight. He definitely has the higher level of competition between the two. Alex Perez, from what I've seen, always comes out explosive in the first round, especially against Mateus Nicolau when he fought him. And I do think Alex Perez probably might steal the first round in this fight. And Charles Johnson's probably just not going to get settled on the feet until the second round. And then that's when Charles Johnson takes over, you know, establishes his range. He definitely is going to use that reach to his advantage and ultimately get a decision win over Alex Perez, because it's tough for me to see him putting him out maybe in the later rounds. But give me Charles Johnson here to win by decision against Alex Perez. All right, and then we move up the card. We got Nikita Krylov versus Modestas Bukauskas. This fight, at first, I was like, all right, Modestas, you know, is going to win here. And I was a little back and forth, but I can't bet on the guy who's coming off of 2 KO losses in Nikita Krylov. He lost to KO to Bogdan Guskov, and then before that, lost by KO to Dominic Reyes in pretty horrible fashion, too. That was a pretty bad KO. So I don't know how Nikita Krylov's chin is. He's definitely not in his prime anymore. And in his prime, I probably would have had him here against Modestas, but Modestas been on a pretty good resurgence. He is on a 4-fight win streak. I will say not the highest level of competition. I think his best win there is against Ian Cutelaba, who he won by split decision, but a win is a win. And then recently coming off a win against Paul Craig. But I'm going to lean to the side of Modestas here. I think Nikita Krylov is still the better overall fighter, but I wouldn't bet on someone who is coming off of back-to-back KO losses. And Modestas is probably carrying some momentum here. He's feeling good. I believe he trains with Tom Aspinall. So, that's a plus too when you're training with high-level guys. So give me Modestas here to get a win over Nikita Krylov. All right, and then we got Ateba Gautier versus Andrey Pulyaev. This is a guy that I've been watching out for. I think he's going to have a spectacular 2026. This dude is the Francis Ngannou of middleweight, both I think in and outside of the cage, because I've seen some interviews or interactions with him, and he looks like a nice guy. And same thing with Francis Ngannou. Every time I saw him in interviews, he seemed like a nice guy too. But in the cage, both of them, especially Ateba, are destroyers, man. And Ateba, he has a promising future. This dude's power can knock out anyone at middleweight, and I'm going to go as far as to say maybe anyone in the UFC if he lands cleanly. And that's super impressive. He is only 23 years old. So the amount of improvement that you're going to see in this guy in the next few years is going to be insane, especially if he is at a good gym, at some point in the future, or who he's training with. But dude has literally the world in front of the world is for him, man. Like, this dude is going to run through this division up until maybe the top 5. But the only way I see him losing is maybe against a pretty good wrestler, and someone who implements their game plan well, takes him down, wears him down. But aside from that, I think he's going to run through Andrey Pulyaev and most likely a first-round KO. Andrey Pulyaev, though, is no slouch, and it's tough because he is a good kickboxer, but he just has no chance here against Ateba, because Ateba's just going to close the distance, and once he lands, that's it. It's a wrap. So give me Ateba Gautier here to get a spectacular KO against Andrey Pulyaev in the first round. I wish there was a betting prop where it was a KO, but brutal KO is a little bit more plus money. This is where I would bet on a brutal KO, just because Ateba Gautier is a destroyer, and he is ultimately going to get the win. If it goes past one round, I'd be surprised. He probably gets him out of there in the second round if it does, but who knows? I think it's a win for Andrey if it gets past the first round, in my opinion. But give me Ateba all day here by KO. All right, and then we have the featured prelim of the night. We have Umar Nurmagomedov versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This one's pretty straightforward. I like Umar here, but I've never seen a guy at minus 1,600. That is insane to me in an MMA match. I get that Umar is Umar, and he is one of the best in the division, but dude, a minus 1,600 is crazy. I don't understand minus 800. That's reasonable, but God, those odds are insane. However, that being said, he is most likely going to get a win here. I think I was torn between KO, TKO, or decision, but Figgy is coming off a nice win against Montel Jackson. Before that, I heard that he was injured in his bout against Corey Sandhagen. And then before that, he went the distance with Peter Yan. So if he comes in here healthy, I could see Umar just, tagging him up, piecing him up, and then ultimately getting a decision win. But I could see a realm where Deiveson maybe tries to initiate the grappling, Umar defends, or counters, and then he ends up on top and grounds and pounds his way to a win over Deiveson Figueiredo. And I like Deiveson Figueiredo, but he's 38 now. He's past his prime. He is pretty much 1 foot out the door at this point. So Give me Umar here to get a win. I'll probably say by decision. I don't see him getting a submission, but let's see what the odds are when Umar by KO is when those come out. But yeah, give me Umar here as my official pick. All right, and then we got one of the most exciting fights on the card, and I can't name a better fight to open up a main card in Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. This is one I've been excited about for weeks now. I can't wait to see these two guys get into the octagon. I like both guys, but Gene Silva's my guy, man, and I'm going to have to pick him here against Arnold Allen. I think Arnold Allen has had an impressive run. He's only lost to Movsar Evloev and Max Holloway in the UFC. Max Holloway, a stud, a GOAT in the featherweight division. And then Movsar Evloev, everyone knows he's good. I'm not a huge fan, so I'm not going to speak to him. But, we all know that he's elite. So those being his only 2 losses, and I believe he has like 13 fights in the UFC, is pretty wild. This dude is what you want in a striker. He's technical. He keeps everything tucked in. He has great striking defense. So he is overall a really good fighter, but Gene Silva just has that X factor, man. He has that power in his hands. I think he is the hardest hitter at 145. And I think he's going to go out there and get a win over Arnold Allen. I'm expecting maybe a KO, TKO win in the later rounds, maybe 2 or 3. But maybe he implements the grappling, but I actually see that being in Arnold Allen's game plan. He's probably going to want to throw in a takedown or 2 or try to get some control time on Gene Silva just because on the feet, man, if these two guys exchange, Gene Silva is his power. I don't think Arnold Allen has fought anyone with Gene Silva's power just because I go back and see that fight he had against Max Holloway. Max Holloway isn't a one-punch knockout artist. He lands volume, and so does Arnold Allen. He's not a guy who carries power, but he'll put together a 3, 4, 5-punch combo. But the thing is, Gene Silva, he's very unorthodox, and he likes playing the waiting game. He'll set up his strikes. He'll be patient. He's calm. That loss against Diego Lopez, though, even though I think it's going to age really well, I think he needed that. He needed that humbling experience in his career, and he got a little reckless in that second round, man. He was tagging up Diego Lopez, and if Diego Lopez didn't have probably the best chin in the UFC, maybe that fight wouldn't have gone the way it did, but, Diego Lopez was eating those and then ultimately ending up landing a big shot on Gene Silva to put him away. But I think him and this team are going to go back and watch that fight and kind of make the adjustments. I think we're going to see a calm, patient Gene Silva here against Arnold Allen, set up his strikes, land big shots, and then ultimately put Arnold Allen away in the later rounds. So give me Gene Silva here to get a dub over Arnold Allen. All right, and then we got my favorite UFC women's fighter as of right now in Natalia Silva versus Rose Namajunas. This might be a little bit of a biased pick, but I got Natalia Silva here. In my notes, I have sharp striker, high volume, nice kicks. She is an overall great fighter, and I think she gets the dub over Rose. No disrespect to Rose, but Natalia Silva is on another level. She is one fight away, and I think this fight is going to set her up for a title match. But Rose has been a good former champion. She's been around for a while, but I just see Natalia Silva dominating this fight, probably frustrating Rose on the feet, and Rose is probably going to try to implement some grappling, but I think Natalia is going to defend well and ultimately just piece up Rose on the feet. And she has the speed advantage, the striking advantage. She mixes in her kicks well and sets up good shots, man. So give me Natalia Silva here. And then I do have her as probably my women's flyweight champ by the end of 2026. So I like Natalia Silva here against Rose, and she will be my official pick for this bout. All right, and then we got the heavyweights. We got the big boys. We got Waldo, Cortes, Acosta versus Derrick Lewis. Woo, this is gonna be a good one, man. And I want to say it's gonna be fireworks in the first like seconds of the match, but I think Waldo Cortes Acosta smart. He has good fight IQ. What I think he should do is probably wear down Derrick Lewis in the first round and then ultimately get a KO win in the later rounds. And I was making a list in my head. I was like, Waldo Cortes Acosta on one side, Derrick Lewis on the other. We got Waldo Cortes Acosta, athletic, solid chin, good striking defense, can take down a fighter if he needs to, good fight IQ. And then we got Derrick Lewis, one punch knockout power. So I think anyone who's kind of backing Derrick Lewis is just, a fan of his. And I don't want to say an MMA casual because Derrick Lewis does have that one punch knockout power that can put anyone out. And if these two guys get in an exchange and, punch for punch, Derrick Lewis is knocking out Waldo. But I like Waldo's defense, man. And I know that he is going to be very cautious, at least in the first few minutes of this fight. Even if it goes that far, just because I know Derrick Lewis is going to be looking for that, haymaker. But Waldo Cortes Acosta has good movement. He has good defense and possibly throwing a takedown or two here against Derrick Lewis. And then once Derrick Lewis is maybe gassed out a little bit in the later rounds, then get a KO win against him. And that's when they get into the exchanges. And then similarly to how Cyril, I forgot who beat Derrick Lewis like that, but it might have been Cyril Gane. I could be mistaken there. Yeah, I believe it was that Cyril Gane fight where he KO'd him, but he did wear him a little bit, and then he got tired, and then ultimately put him away. So, give me Waldo Cortes Acosta again and get it done here. He has the fight IQ, and I think this break that they just had, the UFC, this is the only person this benefited was Waldo Cortes Acosta because he had 5 fights in 2025. So this little break between his last fight, gave him a little bit more time to recover, to get prepared for this one. And hopefully it'll do him well against Derrick Lewis. So give me Waldo Cortes Acosta by late stoppage as my official pick. All right, and now we are moving on to the co-main event of the evening. We have Sean Sugar Show O'Malley versus Song Yadong. This is a great spot for O'Malley, man. He went from, losing twice to Merab to kind of being forgotten about to, back in the spotlight here as the co-main for the first UFC fight card of the year on a new streaming service. If Sean O'Malley delivers here, he could potentially be seeing a title match in his next fight. However, I think Song Yadong is durable enough to last 3 rounds against Sean O'Malley, and I see Sean O'Malley ultimately getting a decision win over Song Yadong. This is stylistically a good matchup for Sean O'Malley just because Song Yadong is primarily a striker. He does grapple, and I don't see that being a big factor here just because if you're not a Dagestani or a Georgian, I think Sean O'Malley has good takedown defense, and I think he will against Song Yadong. Song Yadong struggled against Henry Cejudo a little bit, and Henry Cejudo was out of his prime, shorter fighter, and he was kind of tagging up Song. Song was winning that fight, but against a Sean O'Malley who is a lethal striker, he holds a 5-inch reach over Song Yadong. I just see him piecing him up on the feet. And that's why I say I think Song Yadong is probably going to have to resort to takedowns or at least the threat of takedowns, but Sean O'Malley is going to be good enough to either get back to his feet or stuff the takedowns that are presented his way. So give me Sean O'Malley here to get a decision win over Song Yadong. I think it's going to be a clear decision win. I don't know if Sean O'Malley is going to style on him, but Sean O'Malley is going to have his moments in the fight. So give me Sean O'Malley to get it here, and then who knows? We could be seeing a Sean O'Malley title shot next after this. And all right, we have the main event of the evening. We have Justin the Highlight Gaethje versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. And I'm going to go with Paddy the Baddy here. As much as I hate to say it, because I do like Justin Gaethje. You know, Justin Gaethje has given us some really exciting and awesome fights. And he's been on both ends. You know, he's knocked out people, but at the same time, he's gotten knocked out. One of the most spectacular knockouts in UFC history, which was against Max Holloway. Even though he was on the bad end of that exchange, you know, that fight is going to go down in the record books. And Justin Gaethje gave us that fight, man. He was one of the two guys in the ring, but in the octagon, sorry. But Paddy the Baddy, man, he's shown a lot of improvement. I was never a huge fan of his, and I used to go back and I saw his earlier fights, especially like the one against Jared Gordon, which I thought he lost. He would have his chin out. He's very reckless, but he's sharpened his tools, man. This guy is a completely different fighter now. I went back and saw his Michael Chandler performance. I was like, this dude's a different fighter. He dialed in, man. He locked in and he improved his striking. He was throwing good combinations, good kicks. He was defending the takedowns well, or threatening with like a Kimura submission when Michael Chandler was trying to take him down. This dude's grappling is one of the best at lightweight, and the fact that he's improved his striking so much, I think he goes out here and gets a win over Justin Gaethje. I think the most likely outcome would be Paddy by submission, just because he just holds such a big grappling edge over Justin Gaethje. However, I know Paddy's going to want to go out there and get a KO win against Gaethje. It's going to kind of put the icing on the cake for him. But what I see is probably a ground and pound over Justin Gaethje, unless, you know, Justin Gaethje's a tough guy, man, and I don't see him getting put out by a ground and pound. So Paddy's probably going to have to submit him if he wants to put him out of there. Similarly to that Khabib fight when Khabib took him down and had to submit him, and Justin's not going to tap, man. This guy's going to go out before he taps. So we all know Justin Gaethje's a dog, and I was torn, but I'm back and forth on Paddy by either KO or by submission. I might say Paddy by KO TKO, man. I think everyone's going to be on Paddy by submission, so I'm going to go with Paddy to win by KO TKO, maybe in like the later-ish rounds, so maybe like third, maybe fourth round. I know some people say Paddy has like a cardio issue. I haven't really seen, or if anything, he's improved his cardio as time has gone on, and I think he's ready for a 5-round fight. So this is going to be an exciting matchup. It'd be nice, you know, it'd be awesome to see Justin Gaethje win. If Paddy does get reckless, I think Justin is live for a KO. His uppercuts are lethal, and he has a nasty left hook. So if Paddy resorts to his old ways, you know, I think that is Justin Gaethje's only chance of victory here is by KO/TKO. But give me Paddy here to get it done over Justin Gaethje, and that is going to be my official pick for this fight. Just to recap, I got Ty Miller getting a decision win over Adam Fugitt. Then I got a Ricky Turcios getting a decision win over Cameron Smotherman. I got Josh Hokit over Denzel Freeman by KO. Then I got Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. This one's tough, but I'm going to lean Alexander Hernandez to get a late stoppage here. And then Alex Perez versus Charles Johnson. I'm going to go with Charles Johnson by decision. Modestas Bukauskas to get a KO win over Nikita Krylov. Ateba Gautier to get a brutal KO over Andrey Pulyaev. And then Umar Nurmagomedov to get a decision win over Deiveson Figueiredo. This one I'm not too confident on the method of victory, but Umar Nurmagomedov as my official pick. Silva to get a win over Arnold Allen, potentially by late stoppage. And then I got Natalia Silva by decision over Rose Namajunas. And then Waldo Cortes Acosta by KO over Derrick Lewis in the later rounds. And then Sean O'Malley to put on a spectacular performance against Song Yadong and ultimately get a clear decision win. And then I got Paddy Pimblett to get a win over Justin Gaethje by KO. By KO, yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching all the way through. I'm gonna release a few other videos, my cycle parlay, my safety parlay, and some money line bets that I will have for Saturday. I'll post in another video. Thank you guys. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.